Hello, Jenny Gilchrist here. Today I thought I'd show you just a couple of minutes worth of a demonstration of how to paint some of these tiny little boats into a scene where you've got yachts or motorboats off in the distance of a water view. So as you can see, there's not very much to these, and I think the less detail that you put in sometimes is much better. So to start off, the bulk of the boat is actually not painted at all. It's just white space. So you're going to need to paint a little bit of water around the back of, like negatively paint the boats. So let's do that. Let's put a couple of little, you don't even have to draw them in, but I will for the sake of this. So boats off in the distance are flatter and smaller than the boats in the foreground. As they start coming forward, they get a little bit more of a boat shape. Make sure that you place them randomly around your picture, and as they come forward, they're quite a bit more big, and they've got more of a boat. Now I'm making most of these sort of point forward in this demonstration. All right, so there's my boats. Essentially, they're just dots and dashes. So you need to make yourself quite a nice watery mixture. This is going to be wet into wet, this water. So just paint the horizon line, doesn't matter what's in there behind it. And make sure that you leave a few little gaps. I'm even leaving some that weren't there originally. Just some little dots and dashes. Paint it very wetly so that you get a chance to work with the water. Don't want to leave any bits that will dry. So notice I'm just leaving some little dots and dashes. Sometimes I'm using the ones I drew in and sometimes not. And I'm making sure this bottom that I'm working with, you can even do it on a tilt, is a good idea, is nice and wet. Now as I come forward, I'm actually mixing some slightly greener mixture into the colour. I don't want it darker, but I do want it slightly greener. So you could use something like phthalo blue, or even just a little bit of yellow in the water, in the mixture is fine. Or you could use Prussian blue, completely up to you. So what I'm doing, I don't want it darker, I just want it greener. And just make sure it blends in nicely to that whatever blue you used behind. And I used cobalt, so just making sure there's a few little white spots that are getting bigger as they come forward. So here we are, down to the front. I'm going to add a tiny little bit of yellow to my mixture now so it's nice and green. So I'm coming forward. And that sort of looks like nothing much at the moment. Make sure you paint horizontally, or all water should be painted horizontally. If you want to put some waves in the front, you'll need them to be horizontal as well, like that. All right, so that's how to paint the water. Now I've got some that's already done here, done and dried, so I'm going to use that as my guide, this one here. And what we're going to do next is, it's dried off, so it's all nice and dry. You need a nice detail brush, so I'm going to use my nylon. It's got a nice point on it. And what you're going to do first is just divide the fronts down. So you need to make some sort of a grey. Any blue plus any brown usually makes a bit of a grey. And you're just going to divide the front with a nice light grey so it looks like the sun's shining on one side of the bow. Now this will look quite dark at first, but when you take off the puddle, it certainly lightens it up a little bit. So just on the ones that you can actually see, no need to do it on those ones in the distance. And you might also want to give these a little bit of a top. So some of these in the distance that you're not going to put too much extra stuff on, just give them a bit of a top like that. You can see they're starting to turn into little boats already. Just give them a tiny little dot on the top. This is quite small. I'm going to zoom in so you can see it a bit better. There we go. All right. The next thing you're going to need is a bit of white gouache. So it's quite hard to paint such tiny little things and leave the white detail. So I'm going to use my white gouache here, actually stick my brush right into it, give these boats a little bit of a cabin of some sort. Doesn't even matter if they're not square, just some sort of a little cabin shape. You can do different things on different boats. Some of them will be big, or some of them will be small. And at this stage we'll just leave our white gouache there because we're going to need that again in a moment. And when that dries, you can get your much stronger grey, so burnt sienna with a bit of French Ultra. A bit stronger. And we're going to actually make some little windows in some of these. So let's say just a little bit like that. A couple of them. A little bit of a... You're hardly giving them any detail at all, just something that is there that looks interesting. It doesn't even have to be, you know, these are so small, they're like ½ centimetre. You're just giving them light and dark contrast. Okay, the next thing is we're putting, if your cabins and things are dry, which mine may or may not be completely, you're putting just a little bit of a shadow on the shadow side of the water underneath the boat. This is just going to anchor the boat in. So just one at a time, I'm going to do a couple at a time, but one at a time, rinse your brush and then smooth it out horizontally. So actually looks like a shadow and a reflection at the same time. So smooth it out horizontally, that is like soften that edge horizontally. So you've got a little bit of a shadow. You can do that on all of them that are nice and close to the picture. There's no point in doing it on the ones that are distant. Make sure that you smooth them out, give them a little bit of a horizontal line. Okay, next thing would be with the white gouache on the other side of the base of the boat. So only the ones that are nice and close, you can put a little bit of white. I'm going to need to water that down, just it's a bit too thick. Bit of white gouache to the side, then rinse your brush, dry it off just a little bit, and make sure that you soften the edge to one side so that it looks like it's sort of reflecting into the water just a little. Okay, you can even go down on the bow as well. Excuse me. So I'll just do it on this one as well. So only on the ones that are sort of close by. Okay, so there our boats are kind of sitting in the water nicely at the moment. And so it's up to you at this stage what else you want to do. I'm just going to dry this off just very quickly. Only take a blast with a hairdryer. Right, quick blast with a hairdryer. And then you can add some masts if you want to. The very last thing we'll do is add some dark if we want to. So I'm going to put a couple of masts in. So you don't need to make them very long or very thick. If you've got a boat with a good, a boat with a good point, a brush with a good point, you should be easily able to add a few little lines that look good. That one's a bit thick. Take it off a bit. All right, so there we go so far. Probably could do a little bit more on that one. Yeah, so you don't want to overdo it. All right, so when you've got your white on, you can just add some little bit of horizontal lining just underneath the boats there. And the last thing, if you think that your little cabins and windows are not quite dark enough, now that it's all completely dry, you can just add a little bit more contrast to the dark windows on these boats. Up to you how you want to do it. Okay, often you don't need any more contrast because these boats are in the distance anyway, so anything else is just a bit of overkill. Alright, so I've got a bit of pencil line that I would need to rub out there, and just take that puddle off there. You can see what it looks like when it's not puddled. It's a bit dry. So there's some boats that I've got facing me in the distance of whatever painting I've painted, and of course you can use things like a little bit of cadmium red for some little, you know, a little marine buoy or something on the yacht. But of course you'd use your judicious artistic license here and don't add too much detail when these yachts are in the distance. Anyway, that's how to make yachts look like they're in the distance of a painting, and hope you enjoyed that mini tutorial.